them or had been exiled themselves to Samaria at a far earlier period. Samaritans, and others. 30. Hellenistic period, 333–110 BCE. In 332 BCE, the region was conquered by Alexander the Great of Macedon, ushering in the Hellenistic period. After his death in 322 BCE, his generals divided the empire, and Judea became a frontier region between the Seleucid Empire and Ptolemaic Egypt. 31. Under the Hellenistic kingdoms, Judea was ruled with hereditary office of the High Priest of Israel as a Hellenistic vassal. 32. On the same time, Hellenism gradually spread to varied degrees on all sides in the region through a variety of contacts, but especially as a result of the development of commerce and the arrival of Greek settlers. 33. Between 301 and 219 BCE, the Ptolemies ruled Judea in relative peace. 34. Jews often found themselves working in the Ptolemaic administration and army, which led to the rise of a Hellenized Jewish elite class, for example the Tobiids. 35. This period also saw the rise of a Hellenistic Judaism, which first developed in the Jewish diaspora of Alexandria and Antioch, and then spread to Judea. The major literary product of this cultural syncretism is the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Bible from Biblical Hebrew and Biblical Aramaic to Koine Greek. The reason for the production of this translation seems to be that many of the Alexandrian Jews had lost the ability to speak Hebrew and Aramaic. 32. Marble bust of Alexander the Great discovered in Beit Shean, 2nd or 1st century BCE. At the turn of the 2nd century BCE, a successful military campaign in Syria led by the Seleucid Antiochus III finally brought their Jew into the Seleucid Empire, with Jerusalem falling under his control in 198 BCE. 35. The Seleucids, like the Ptolemies before them, held a suzerainty over Judea. They respected Jewish culture and protected Jewish institutions. 36. This policy was drastically reversed by Antiochus. 4. Possibly due to a dispute over leadership of the temple in Jerusalem and the office of high priest, or a revolt whose nature was lost to time. Antiochus IV issued decrees forbidding many traditional Jewish practices and began a campaign of persecution against devout Jews. This triggered a revolt against his rule, the Maccabean Revolt. 36. These decrees were a departure from typical Seleucid practice, which did not attempt to suppress local religions in their empire. 37. Scholars of Second Temple. Judaism sometimes referred to Antiochus' reign as the Antiochene crises for the Jews. 38. And as a period of civil war between Hellenized and Orthodox forms of Judaism. 39. 40. Maccabean Revolt, 167–141 BCE. According to 1 Maccabees, 2 Maccabees, and Josephus, 41, the Seleucid Emperor Antiochus IV, R 175–164, moved to assert strict control over the Seleucid satrapy of Syria and Phoenicia. 42, after her successful invasion of Ptolemaic Egypt, 170–168 BCE, was turned back by the intervention of the Roman Republic. 43, 44, he sacked Jerusalem and the Temple, suppressing Jewish and Samaritan religious and cultural observances. 42, 45, and imposed Hellenistic practices. C 168–167 BCE. 45. Antiochus' actions enraged the elites but also the rural population, who had remained mostly untouched by Hellenism. In 167 BCE, Mattathias, a Hasmonean lineage Jewish priest, killed a Jew in his hometown Modiin who stepped forward to offer sacrifice to the Greek gods. He then killed a Seleucid official who ordered the sacrifice. According to 1 Maccabees, he declared, "Let everyone who is zealous for the law and supports the covenant come out with me." 46. and fled with his sons and followers to the wilderness of Judea. These events signaled the start of the Maccabean revolt. 47. When Mattathias died, his son Judas Maccabeus took over as leader of the revolt. He used guerrilla tactics to defeat several small Seleucid armies while Antiochus IV was fighting a war in the east. The conflict was heavily religiously charged because, in order to distinguish themselves from their Jewish opponents, the Maccabees presented themselves as radical Jews and carried out large-scale forced circumcisions. Judas eventually succeeded in capturing Jerusalem and purifying the allegedly desecrated temple. 48. This event is commemorated by the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. 49. The Maccabean cause was aided further in 164 BCE when Antiochus IV died and his generals fought over guardianship of his young son Antiochus V. This turmoil ended when Antiochus IV's nephew, Demetrios I returned from exile in Rome, deposed Antiochus V, and ascended to the Seleucid throne. Demetrios continued the war against the Maccabees and backed their Jewish opponents. Around this time Judas was able to make a treaty with the Romans. Around 161 BCE, a Roman-Jewish treaty was signed. In 160 BCE, the Seleucid general Bacchides defeated the Maccabees at the Battle of Elassa in 160 BCE. Judas' death during the battle dealt a blow to the rebels. 50. After Judas died, his brother Jonathan Appius took over as the leader of the revolt. He benefited from another internal Seleucid struggle between King Demetrius I Soter and a usurper, Alexander Ballas. Both turned to Jonathan, attempting to win him over with concessions, and Alexander Ballas even elevated him to the position of high priest. Alexander Ballas was eventually able to assert himself, but he was quickly defeated by Demetrios' son Demetrios II. The battle for the throne was now between him and the general Diodotos Tryphon, which strengthened Jonathan's position even more. This did not change when Tryphon was able to capture and murder Jonathan in Acre through treachery. 51. In 142 BCE, Simon Bassi, the last of Mattathias' sons, took over as rebellion leader and high priest. He was eventually successful in destroying the Acra, a fortified complex in Jerusalem that was the last symbol of Seleucid rule in Judea. 52. Hasmonean vassal state, 140–110 BCE. After Simon was assassinated and replaced by his son John Hyrcanus I, 134–104 BCE, Antiochus V led a large army into Judea, forcing Hyrcanus to surrender as a vassal ruler in Jerusalem after a 2-year siege. However, following Antiochus' death in the Seleucid-Parthian Wars in 129 BCE, the Seleucids were assumed too weak to pursue an active policy outside of Syria. Hyrcanus was relieved of his burden. 3. Establishing the now de facto independent Hasmonean state of Judea, minting coins for the first time, and overhauling the state's territory. Stone bowl fragment with the name Hyrcanus which was discovered in Thgivati parking lot, Jerusalem. Hasmonean period, 110–63 BCE. Around 110 BCE, Hyrcanus launched an invasion of Transjordan. 353. His army laid siege to the city of Medeba and took it after a 6-month siege. After this victory, he turned north and invaded Samaria, which had long separated Judea from Jewish settlements in Galilee. 3. Shechem was reduced to a village and the Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim was destroyed. 54. 55. Archaeological evidence places these events between 111 and 110 BCE. 54. 56. Hyrcanus also launched a military campaign in Idumea, capturing Marissa and Adora. The Idumeans were forced to convert to Judaism, by threat of exile or death, depending on the source. 57. 58. 59. Following the death of Hyrcanus, His son Aristobulus I, R104-103 BCE, assumed the title of king for the first time and combined it with the office of high priest. People were now more open to Hellenistic influences that had been demonized as un-Jewish during the war. The Hasmonean kingship bore clear Hellenistic monarchy traits, but combined these with theocratic elements. 60. Aristobulus conquered and annexed Galilee. 5.3. The Galilee, which had previously been sparsely inhabited, mostly by pagan populations, but also by Jewish communities, experienced an influx of Jewish settlement following these conquests. 61. Josephus writes that he had also subjugated and Judaized Ichaia, but this claim is not supported by archaeological evidence. 362. Alexander Jannaeus, R103-76 BCE, waged a series of expansionist wars, primarily against the Hellenistic cities surrounding Judea. Unlike his predecessors, who were focused on the concentration of the Jewish population in one country, his military efforts were motivated by a desire to control key economic points such as ports and trade routes. On the same time, he carried on his predecessors' conversion policy, and destroyed Pella because its inhabitants refused to convert. During his reign, the Hasmonean Kingdom. Map of the Hasmonean Kingdom expanded to its greatest extent, now including the coastal plain, the northern Negev, and western parts of Transjordan. 6, 4, 5. Jannaeus' dual role as king and high priest, his inclination towards the Sadducees. The high cost of the wars in both money and lives threatened the governmental balance and sparked opposition to his rule, resulting in the Judean Civil War, which Jannaeus brutally suppressed. Salome Alexandra, R76-67 BCE, Jannaeus' widow, ascended to power following her husband's death. Under her rule, the priesthood was separated from the other powers of government for the first time since the rise of the Hasmoneans. Salome appointed her son, Hyrcanus II, as high priest and his brother, Aristobulus II as army commander, and pursued a moderate, mostly defensive policy that included the formation of a large and deterring army. Her 9-year reign is described as one of peace and economic prosperity, during which the country recovered from wars. The queen clearly supported the Pharisees, even allowing them to persecute and punish the Sadducees. Her rule had a distinct Hellenistic flavor, as there was no tradition of female rule in Judea. Hasmonean kings attempted to revive the Judah described in the Bible, a Jewish monarchy ruled from Jerusalem and including all territories once ruled by David and Solomon. In order to carry out this project, the Hasmoneans forcibly converted neighbor nations to Judaism. 63. Some scholars argue that the Hasmonean dynasty institutionalized the final Jewish biblical canon. 64. Hasmonean Civil War. After Salome Alexander died in 67 BCE, Hyrcanus II, her older son, was entitled to assume the throne and was already acting as high priest. However, Aristobulus II, her younger son, was more energetic and determined to become king. Aristobulus gathered an army to attack Jerusalem, forcing Hyrcanus to abdicate the crown. The abdication was formally carried out in the temple, and Aristobulus' son, Alexander, married Hyrcanus' daughter, Alexandra. However, Antipater, an Edomite noble who served as Hyrcanus' advisor, convinced him that giving up the throne was a mistake that needed to be undone. Along with Artaxerxes III, king of the Nabateans, these two formed an alliance and together they attacked and besieged Jerusalem. During the same period, Roman general Pompey was in the midst of a campaign in the eastern Mediterranean. After defeating Mithridates VI of Pontus, Pompey conquered the Seleucid kingdom, which became a Roman province called Syria. The warring brothers, who saw a mighty army camped near them, appealed to Pompey to decide between them. 3 delegations then appeared before Pompey, one sent by Aristobulus, one sent by Hyrcanus, and another from the people who demanded to abolish the Hasmonean dynasty, which had transformed the rule of the priests into the rule of kings. Pompey heard their delegations but refrained from deciding. Eventually, in 63 BCE, Pompey invaded Judea, conquered Jerusalem, desecrated the Holy of Holies, imprisoned Aristobulus, and declared Hyrcanus an ethnic, a title inferior to the title king. Judea then became a vassal kingdom of the Roman Republic. Early Roman